You ever have that feeling like you're teaching three different classes, but they're all in the same room at the same time? Yeah, you are not alone. Today, we are going to tackle one of the biggest, and I mean biggest, challenges for any educator: the mixed skill classroom. It can feel like total chaos, right? But what if I told you there's a framework that can bring a little order to that chaos and, more importantly, actually helps every single student grow? I mean, this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you keep your advanced students from zoning out while your newcomers are just trying to tread water? It feels like this impossible tightrope walk. But maybe the problem isn't the balancing act itself. Maybe it's the whole structure we're working with. So, here's our game plan. First, we're going to really define the challenge we're all facing. Then we'll dive into a framework that's all about growth and break it down into 4 simple levels. After that, and this is the good part, we'll get super practical with a guide for instructors. And finally, we'll zoom out and look at the huge benefits of thinking this way. Okay, before we even get to the strategies, we have to start with a little mental shift. The real challenge here isn't just about juggling assignments and schedules, it's about changing our entire focus from grading to growth. It's about getting away from a system of just points and penalties and moving towards a classroom culture that actually celebrates progress, no matter where a student is starting from. And this, right here, is the core of the whole solution: a system built on proficiency levels. Now, those key words are everything: skill, independence, and real-world performance. This isn't about memorizing facts to get an A on a test. It's about preparing students to be competent, confident, and ready for a real professional setting. So why this method? I mean, what makes a level-based system so much more effective than the way we've always done things? Well, it really boils down to 4 key ideas that completely change the dynamic of the classroom for everybody: the students and you, the teacher. First off, it puts growth way ahead of grades. Feedback stops feeling like a score and starts feeling more like a constructive workplace review. Second, it gives every single student a clear roadmap. They always know what the next step is to level up. Third, it lets students work right at their own sweet spot, where they're challenged but not totally overwhelmed. And finally, for us instructors, it makes assessment way faster and, honestly, a lot more fair. All right, let's get into the heart of it all: the 4 proficiency levels. This is the secret sauce. This is the structure that makes everything else click into place, creating a consistent journey towards mastery that works for every student. Now, before we see the levels, let's be super clear on what we mean. A proficiency level isn't some fuzzy label. It's defined by real things you can actually see. It just answers 2 simple questions: how much help does this student need? And what kind of task can they actually handle on their own? That's it. This slide just brings the whole thing to life, doesn't it? You can see the progression so clearly. The novice, they follow the recipe. The beginner starts to experiment a little on their own. The intermediate student starts taking the lead on small projects. And the advanced student, they're operating almost like a junior professional. What's so cool about this is that it doesn't matter what the subject is: cybersecurity, game design, engineering. The path to getting good looks pretty much the same. And now for my favorite part. We've talked about the what and the why, so let's get down to the how. Here are 6 real, concrete strategies you can take and start using in your own classroom, like tomorrow. We're going to zoom in on a few of these, but this is the whole toolkit. You're going to align assignments to the different levels. You'll vary the depth of a task, so everyone's working on the same theme, but with different support. You'll rotate your attention like a pro. You'll have students document their process, which is huge. You'll use your advanced students as mentors, which, by the way, is an amazing way for them to lock in their own learning. And you'll tailor your feedback for each level. It's a whole system. Let's look a little closer at that second strategy: keeping the project the same, but just changing the depth. So look here. On the left, a novice gets a step-by-step guide to handle a cyber incident. All the scaffolding they need is right there. But on the right, an advanced student gets a totally open-ended scenario. Same topic, completely different levels of freedom and complexity. This is how you keep the entire class engaged and moving forward together. Strategy 3 is all about managing your most valuable resource in the classroom: your attention. This simple rotation makes sure everyone gets what they need. You kick off the class by getting your novices set up because they need the most guidance right at the beginning. Then you check in with the beginners. And what that does is it frees you up to have those deeper, richer conversations with your intermediate and advanced students later in the session, since they can get started on their own. Now, strategy 4 is a game changer because it shifts the focus from just the final, polished product to the messy, beautiful process. When you have students post weekly updates, share screenshots of their work in progress, and write about the challenges they overcame, well, you get a much richer and frankly fairer picture of their learning journey. It's not just about what they made, it's about how they made it. Okay, let's talk feedback. This is strategy 6. For this whole system to really work, your feedback has to be different for each level. For a novice, you want to be super direct and clear. Your goal is to just guide them right back to the structure you gave them. Something like, hey, add these required pieces, just follow steps 1 through 3. Simple, direct. Now, as students move up to beginner, you can see how the feedback starts to change. It becomes less about just following directions and more about showing that they get it. So you might ask them to give me one example that shows you understand this. You're prompting them to start applying the concepts themselves. For an intermediate student, you really want to start encouraging that critical thinking and problem solving. Feedback like, document the issue you solved, pushes them to stop, reflect on their process, and explain their thinking, which is a skill they will use for the rest of their careers. And finally, for your advanced students, the feedback should challenge them to think beyond just completing the assignment. Asking them to add a checklist or a tip box for impact encourages them to create value for other people. This is how you help a student make that leap from just being a learner to becoming a leader. So, when you put all of these pieces together, the levels, the strategies, the mindset shift, what does it actually create? Well, it creates a classroom that is just fundamentally more organized, more supportive, and way more effective for every single person in that room. The end result is a system where every student is truly working at their perfect level of challenge. The expectations are clear and consistent, assessment feels fair, and it actually models the real world. And the whole learning environment just becomes more predictable and supportive. You're no longer just putting out fires, you're cultivating growth. And all of this leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. What if we've been asking the wrong question this whole time? What if the goal of education isn't to get every student to the exact same finish line at the exact same time? What if success is just about making sure that every single student, from your newest novice to your top expert, takes one meaningful step forward every single day? That is the real power of this approach.